pcSHOWmeAI.
Hey Trailblazers, welcome back to pcSHOWmeAI. Today I have a very special guest. My coworker Eric and I are diving into something really exciting, Microsoft's open source agentic AI system, Magentic-One. We'll be talking about how it works as a multi-agent orchestrator, almost like a mini business or a specialized team just for you. We'll discuss some of the real-world challenges in applying it, as well as several incredibly useful and interesting peripheral concepts. So let's jump right into our conversation now. Hope you enjoy it. I don't know if you were aware of Microsoft's latest release, but there aren't a lot of people talking about it. It might have got buried in the election coverage, but it's a pretty big deal. And it's actually open source. Should be able to see my screen now. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. If you look at the license, it's got pretty good license. It's got the MIT license, so it's actually fully open source.
What are we looking at here? This
Is kind of cool. What it does is there's a workflow here. So the orchestrator, you give it the task, and the orchestrator plans it out, and it creates the task plan, and then it gives everybody their part to do. The file surfer and the web surfer. The file surfer is like the images and the code or whatever you got or you're working with, and the web surfer can actually go use your browser and click on things and find out information and come back. And then that's when it tells it, no, you did that wrong. You had to go redo that, and it goes and does it again. Then the coder can actually process some of that code and write code and do some other functionality. I mean, this is just how I understand.
Yeah,
it.
I was thinking of something else. This is very cool. This is new. I dropped a link in the chat. If you want to open that up, it speaks to it's the Microsoft Microsoft release from November that says Magentic-One, a generalist multi-agent system for solving complex tasks. And this is just the write-up on it. We don't need to read through the whole thing, but this is just what Microsoft describes what you were just showing. So it's a way of orchestrating the AI flow for each specific task. This is huge in terms of usability and application. But I do want to call something out for us to think about. One of the common real-world situations that I'm running into is a lack of vision of how it will be used in the real world. Now, a lot of times we think in terms of generative AI and some specific outputs from a prompt response perspective. With this, the perspective is now a workflow and a task flow perspective. And just like with CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment for software development and release, you could build in and should build in controls that have the principle in mind and taking the action that AI is a supplement, not a replacement. And when you see that, now let's go back to that workflow tab that you were just showing. Yeah, this here. So the file surfer, this is all to your point. Each one of these, we'll call it personas, tasks. The outcome that we want in number one here is a file surfer. That's the ability to surf through the files that we're going to be referencing and looking for information on. Yeah, it's very nice to see that Microsoft has a product like this. I'm very happy
and made it open source, right? I mean, it's like anybody can like use this and build on it now. And they got it right out there in GitHub. I can put the link for you probably found it already, knowing you. I'll put it in the chat just in case.
The Autogen Magentic-One repository.
Okay. Oh yeah.
About a month ago, it looks like was the first commits.
what
Right.
you were talking about before, they actually have 4 sample tasks here that they used it for. And so they're pretty interesting, especially like this task about the find and export missing citations of the paper. There was one that was, I think this is a chicken sandwich one. Yeah. So order a shawarma chicken sandwich. So and basically it goes through everything it did, right? So the task was order a shawarma chicken sandwich or just a sandwich, right? And so he started and it plays through this little thing. And so the orchestra, he gave it its initial plan and it like set everything up. It thought everything through. And it's like, okay, so this is what we got here. These are what we need to consider. And it went through everything, given the verified facts, requested about ordering chicken shawarma, location mentioned to Noor in Seattle, facts to look up. Went through all this stuff, right? And then this is what it like, and then I figured out the processes that need to be satisfied, and then I farmed them out to their different people, like I mean, people like AI. It's not AI agents, not like people. And
Different
so the
focus.
AI agent, the web surfer, is one agent, and so that got here, and it's searching for Tenor Seattle to find website and menu details, and then request satisfied. And then this request, and then it said, orchestrator said this request is not yet satisfied. We have found information showing in web surfer went back and it said I typed. Anyways, it's pretty interesting watching it back and forth. It's almost like people talking to each other. Yeah. And then it found it. It got the wrong one. First, it clicked on that, and then it said, no, you got to go back and check it out again. So went back, and then it ordered, got the right one. You could actually probably have it order it too if you gave it like your credit card number, I'm sure, but you might want to experiment with it for an extended period before doing something like that. And they say at this point that the agentic AI, at least in this implementation, is still only about 30-40% as efficient as a human. But I mean, it's still a big deal, right? It's the worst it'll ever be right now, so it'll just get better. I mean, it's groundbreaking stuff. And it like checks them off. It's like, okay, you did good here. This is done. This is done. And kind of is like a mini business having his team or whatever do stuff, right?
It's all about how you configure it.
Yeah.
I mean that looked like it was a test workflow that was set up and just validating steps, and it does illustrate how each one of those tasks could be pulling from a different language model and tasked with a different point of authority on a subject. Is this a sandwich? Yes or no? Um, and then even with that, you could fine tune how the interpretation of the flow goes. So, for example, you could say to focus on some elements over another. For example, if I say a chicken sandwich, rather than focusing on the chicken, I would focus on the presentation, which is the sandwich. So that's something that you could focus on in terms of prioritization for identifying the thing. So, and in that sort of analysis and prioritization of the processing itself of each of those steps, that's where the just starting with a very good chat GPT model that you have very clear, concise um, expectations as a result of the input. That needs to be key to every other step. So it's that
Right.
every step has a cascading effect and an amplified effect of what the previous step was doing. If the first step of interpreting the language was chicken in the context of its meat, and they ordered a cheeseburger because meat is the point of reference, then that would be a problem. So you just step it back. It's to your point about around 30% accuracy, or not accuracy, but 30% efficiency. In other
Yeah.
words, it takes longer. You got to work with it a bit more, and that's kind of a very large scope of a concept, but I think if we were to try to simplify or quantify it, we'd say probably on the order of 5-year-old, maybe. Say, hey, order me a sandwich. Like, okay, let's, step through this kind of thing. But as you do work with that, just as with a child, there are exponential rates of improvement. So the next time it comes time to order a sandwich, it's not, okay, let's get started again. It's like, hey, just validate that this is accurate. Yeah, that's right. Boom. So that's where the
Right.
training of the process, the training of the models, and coupled with the definition of the workflows and the definition of what is a success for each workflow item, is really exciting. Again, to see Microsoft have a new product like this, I'm happy about that. As you know, I'm largely all in on Microsoft in terms of general tech. So
This is interesting here. I mean, because this is built. It looks like it's built on their AutoGen, which has been around for a long time, right? And so it's got, you set up the Docker containers to run it and everything, and it tells what you got to be careful of, and it does make generalizations. If you don't specify things, it'll like make its best guess or whatever a lot of times. So you like to your point, you want to be clear about what you want. Otherwise, you might not get what you want. Might get something else, right? And it was I thought this was interesting here. Be aware that the agents may occasionally attempt risky connections, such as recruiting humans for help or accepting cookie agreements without human involvement. I thought the recruiting humans for help was interesting because, I mean, there are, recorded instances where AIs have recruited human help or even made money themselves, by doing their own thing.
yeah, this is really talking to the level of automation that you have built into your web browser. So earlier you mentioned something about not giving your credit card to the AI. Well, the you don't need to give the credit card to the AI because it's saved in your browser. So your AI is interfacing with your browser, which has your credit card, so it's making the purchases. So that's what this is saying. It's, hey, be aware of what you're doing, and there it could not have the results that you're expecting.
Right.
Yeah. I did want to mention something else on this project. I have been poking around a little bit. There is within the packages directory under Python, um, there are separate packages, and each of those do have their own licensing considerations.
Oh,
And
okay.
by and large, it's MIT related and MIT kind of stuff, but that that becomes important when you're considering solutions on enterprise level. Uh, you need to run things like this through licensing departments, legal teams. There's liability is the big one that is often ignored with things like this. The MIT license says you could use this, but we're not liable if something goes wrong. And that sounds good on its face, but one of the issues with that on a legal perspective is if something goes wrong and you want to hold them liable for it, then you can't. In other words, if I'm using this package and I'm doing my updates and that package was compromised and it did kind of like what we're just describing right now, but it exfiltrated a bunch of stuff it shouldn't or done things that it shouldn't, and now I as a company am being sued because this was allowed to happen in my software, I now am responsible for that because this code that I use in my code messed up. So it is nice from personal uses, and in most cases it is okay. But just in general, people need to be aware that an MIT license and similar are very nice. But if you are denied access to a library, a package, a solution, based on some licensing issues, it's oftentimes not because of it's free or not. So just wanted to
Okay.
so that's a
Yeah.
point that I'm particularly interested in. I won't go into it here, but it does play into things like which language models are you using at what times? Are you using free models or paid models? And are you using it in the context of a corporation or not? Personal use, is it free for personal use? Think in terms of how many tokens am I allocating for a number of queries from a logged in user or an authenticated user based on what I understand their professional level or use cases to be. As we implement more and more AI, I think these kinds of tools are very interesting and exciting, and again, in general, usable. But be aware of the risks and be aware of the implications of committing to a solution, a package. What if in 5 years you want to use a different tool? Is that going to be an easy transition? Can the two work in parallel? Do you already use a tool that this would complement instead of replacing? Things like this. I'll
Good
get off
point.
that soapbox.
Yeah, those are all good points, especially for business. I mean, for, people that are just experimenting at home or whatever, they may not care as much, right? Especially if they're
But
all in their
but
own
that
containers. But
but it does translate into business though. If I'm trying something at home and it works really, really well, I might get excited about that and want to implement it at work, and then I just go ahead and do it, build it into a package like an executable, and then that code behind is
right,
kind of blocked potentially.
right. A
So
lot of times you don't know what can go wrong till it goes wrong, right? And then it's like, oh wow, I didn't know that would happen.
yeah, there's incompatibilities to take into account, and yeah, and duplicate work. There could be options that are already being implemented, so this could be a complement. Like maybe you could work on this at home because it comes very naturally and it just works well, or you're just a fan. But then you get to work and there's a different tool in use or being considered, or a different set to choose from, and there's still value in using in the tools that we use, in our off time, I'll say, even if you can't use them at work because of that. You could speak to the concepts of, oh yeah, task-driven modules for AI generating outcomes, outputs, and buzzword, etc.
Hmm.
Good stuff. I'm a fan. So
But
very
yeah,
cool find on
this
this
would
one. Good news.
be interesting to try this. Need to look into it a little bit more first. And
Yeah, I mean, it's just as easy as cloning it, so I'll just go ahead and clone it locally and maybe poke around a little bit. But yeah,
yeah.
very cool, very cool.
And that wraps up our conversation on Magentic-One. This multi-agent orchestrator has huge potential. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. As always, later Trailblazers, have a great day.
PC show me AI, PC show me AI, PC show me AI.